Wordsworth, Romney, obsolescence.
He's waiting, Chancellor.
Order him in.
Wordsworth, obsolescence.
You walk into this room at your own risk, because it leads to the future. Not a future that will be, but one that might be. This is not a new state. It is simply the extension of what began in the old one. And it has patterned itself after every dictator who has ever planted the imprint of a bloody boot on the pages of history since the beginning of time. But, like every one of the super-states that preceded it, it has one iron rule. Logic is the enemy, and truth a menace. This is Mr. Romney Wordsworth in his last 48 hours on Earth. He's a citizen of this state, but will soon have to be eliminated because he's made of flesh and because he has a mind. Mr. Romney Wordsworth will draw his last breaths here in the Twilight Zone.
Wordsworth, wrong. Field investigation finding obsolescence. Do you know why you're here, Mr. Wordsworth?
Yes, sir.
I'd ask you to speak up, if you will.
Yes, sir. I know why I'm here.
You've been under investigation, Mr. Wordsworth, for the mandatory period of 1 year and 11 months. You're found to be obsolete. It's the purpose of this hearing to make a finding in the matter and sentence accordingly. Do you understand?
Yes, sir. I understand.
Your occupation, Mr. Wordsworth.
A librarian, sir.
Of what?
A librarian, sir.
Has this man had counsel?
Yes, sir, he has.
You're sure he knows his rights?
He's been given orientation, sir.
I'm told you've had counsel and been given orientation, Mr. Wordsworth, but I'm still not sure in my own mind that you understand the purpose of this hearing. The field investigators in your sector has classified you as obsolete. This finding carries with it serious implications. Do you understand? Now I ask you again, your occupation.
I am a librarian. That is my occupation, my profession. If you people choose to call that obsolete.
Clarify the term. Mr. Wordsworth, you people, you make reference to the state.
I make reference to the state.
And you persist in declaring your occupation as being that of a librarian. Is that correct?
That is correct.
A librarian having to do with books?
Yes, sir. Books.
Well, since there are no more books, Mr. Wordsworth, there is scant need for libraries. Of course, it follows that there is little call for the services of a librarian. Case in point, a minister. He would tell us that his function is that of preaching the Word of God. And of course, since the state has proven there is no God, that would make the function of a minister somewhat academic as well.
There is a God.
You're in error, Mr. Wordsworth. There is no God. The state has proven there is no God.
You cannot erase God with an E.
You're obsolete.
A lie!
Wordsworth,
No man is obsolete.
you have no function, Mr. Wordsworth. You're an anachronism, a ghost from another time.
I'm nothing more than a reminder to you that you can't destroy truth by burning books.
You're a bug, Mr. Wordsworth, a crawling insect, an ugly, misformed little creature who has no purpose here, no meaning.
I'm a human being.
A human being. Mr. Wordsworth, is that what you lay claim to? You are, well, you were a librarian. Mr. Wordsworth, a dealer in books and 2-cent fines and pamphlets and closed stacks and the musty insides of a language factory that spewed out meaningless words on an assembly line. Words, Mr. Wordsworth, that had no substance and no dimension, like air, like the wind, like a vacuum. You may believe had an existence by scribbling index numbers on little cards.
I don't care, I tell you. I'm a human being. I exist. If I utter one thought aloud, that thought will live long after I'm dead.
Delusions. Mr. Wordsworth, delusions that you inject into your veins with the needle filled with printer's ink, the narcotics you call literature, the Bible, poetry, essays, all of it just an opiate to make you think you have a strength when in fact you have no strength at all. You have nothing but a dream, and the state has no use for your kind. You waste our time, Mr. Wordsworth, and you're not worth the waste. Gentlemen, how do you find obsolete?
Obsolete.
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 I concur. Wordsworth, Romney, the board has made a finding. The board finds you obsolete. Mr. Wordsworth, your rights are as follows. You are to be liquidated within a period of 48 hours, but you have an option as to method and precise time. There are several prescribed methods, Mr. Wordsworth, the gas, pill, electrocution, and it be done immediately or an hour from now or at any specific time that you request.
What other options do I have?
The most popular, Mr. Wordsworth, extermination at a time unknown. This way the subject is aware of neither the time nor the method. Psychologically, it's somewhat easier.
I'm a very rich man.
Louder, please.
I was simply saying I'm a rich man. I have such a wealth of choices. Cowards die many times before their death. The valiant never taste of death but once. Of all the wonders I yet have heard, it seems to be most strange that men should fear seeing that death, a necessary end, will come when it will come. That's from Julius Caesar, Shakespeare. Since you've given me the luxury of choice, I'll choose the following. To be given an assassin to whom I will tell the exact method of my execution.
Mr. Wordsworth, we don't understand the nature of the request.
You are to assign me my assassin, but only he and I will know the exact way in which I am to die.
That would be acceptable, Mr. Wordsworth, so long as your liquidation is accomplished within the 48-hour period.
And one final request, Chancellor. I should like to die with an audience. I would like my death to be televised.
Well, that too can be arranged. Mr. Wordsworth, it's not infrequent that we televise executions. It has an educative effect on the population.
I have no doubt.
Now, is the time of the liquidation, Mr. Wordsworth?
Tomorrow midnight.
And the place?
In my room.
Agreed. We will choose your liquidator and send him over to you, and he will be duty-bound, just as you have prescribed, not to divulge the method you decided upon. That is all, Mr. Wordsworth. You may leave and go back to your little room.
Thank you, Chancellor. Whoever said the state didn't have a heart.
An odd one, and with very bizarre requests.
Bizarre. But, to our advantage, he wants his death televised. All right. We'll oblige him. By midnight tomorrow, he'll be crawling up the walls with fear, and we'll televise every moment of it. His fright, his horror, and I dare say, his belly-crawling supplications for mercy. Oh, we'll televise it all over the country. We'll show the people how this obsolete man, this librarian, dies.
Come in, Chancellor. coming, Chancellor.
Very irregular, Mr. Wordsworth. Do you know why I came? Do you?
I invited you.
By all means, you invited me, but why would I honor such an invitation? A cryptic note from a condemned man asking me to visit him during the last hour of his life? Hardly the norm, Mr. Wordsworth. Hardly what I'm accustomed to, eh? Somewhat suspect as well. How do I know I haven't been invited here for that last pitiful gesture of vengeance on the part of the condemned?
Vengeance?
Well, I'm more or less responsible for the finding in your case, Mr. Wordsworth. Your demise, in less than an hour from now, can be attributed, at least in part, to my decision. I'll tell you why I came, Mr. Wordsworth. To prove something to you.
And that is?
To prove to you that the state has no fears. None at all.
You'll forgive me, Chancellor, but that has the element of a joke. You come all the way to my room to prove that the state isn't afraid of me? What an incredible burden that must be, to disprove that an obsolete librarian could have any effect on the state at all. Now I'll tell you the reason you came, Chancellor. The reason you don't even admit to yourself.
Well, now it's my turn to ask. What might that be?
I don't fit the formula. Somewhere along the line, something's gone wrong. Your state has everything tagged and filed and indexed, and people like you are strength. People like me are weakness. Your kind commands and dictates and orders. My kind merely follows and goes along. Something's gone wrong. I don't fit, do I?
Oh, you fit, Mr. Wordsworth. In a little while, you'll be cringing and pleading just like they all do. You've got a miserable, worthless little life. But you've also got an instinct for survival. And soon, when you know that life is slipping away, when your survival is just a question of minutes, well, we'll see which is the stronger, the state or the librarian. I take it you've already had a discussion with whoever's been assigned your liquidation.
Indeed, I have.
Midnight, isn't it?
About 10 minutes from now. They brought that in this afternoon. Very efficient. Took 2 men less than 10 minutes to set it up. We're being televised now.
That's not unusual. During the mass executions last year, we televised round the clock. 1,300 people were put to death in 6 hours.
You people never learn, do you? History teaches you nothing.
Oh, quite the contrary. It teaches us a great deal. We had predecessors, Mr. Wordsworth, who had the beginnings of the right idea.
Hitler.
Well, of course, Hitler.
Stalin.
Error was not of excess. It was simply not going far enough. Too many undesirables were left around, and undesirables eventually form a core of resistance. The old people, for example, clutch at the past and won't accept the new, the sick, the maimed, the deformed. They latch themselves onto the healthy body and damage it, so we eliminate them. Or people like yourself, they can perform no function for the state, and so we do away with them. Charming room you've got here, Mr. Wordsworth. Lived here long?
For over 20 years. I made the furniture myself.
So I understand. That, incidentally, has kept you alive. That particular talent. Carpentry is a skill, and the state provides considerable leeway for workers who possess certain skills. Unfortunately, you went as far as you could go, which was insufficient. So, in a little while, it'll be the end of a rather fruitless life, and Mr. Romney Wordsworth goes to his own nirvana. Well, that's what they call it in your books, isn't it? You're not facing the camera, Mr. Wordsworth. You're cheating the audience. They'll want to see how you die. Please, Mr. Wordsworth, face the camera and don't stifle your emotions. If you feel like crying, well, go ahead and cry. Or if you want to plead, well, why don't you do so? Perhaps some high state official might take pity on you.
Well, you'd appreciate that, wouldn't you? Some chest thumping, a little hand wringing, some sobbing, histrionic moaning.
Suit yourselves. Unfortunately, I don't have time to be entertained by them when they do come. I've got another appointment this evening.
Chancellor?
To make it brief, Mr. Wordsworth.
You have plenty of time. You're not going anywhere.
How's that?
May I have one of your cigarettes?
Smoke as many as the time allows, Mr. Wordsworth.
You might want to also. You see, Chancellor, I haven't been entirely fair with you. I invited you here for a very special reason. Would you like to know the method I've chosen for my execution? I had a gas line installed around the room. It's set to begin filling the place with cyanide at midnight. About 5 minutes from now.
Very thoughtful. Mr. Wordsworth, a relatively quick and painless death.
Isn't it, though? And yet, knowing that you're going to be extinguished in less than 5 minutes is still not the most pleasant of thoughts, is it, Chancellor?
That depends on the individual, Mr. Wordsworth.
Indeed, it does.
The door's locked.
Yes, it is.
What kind of idiocy is this?
Question. How does a man react to the knowledge that he's going to be dead in less than 5 minutes? Answer. Depends upon the individual. As for me, Chancellor, I'm going to read my Bible. Hidden for over 20 years. A crime punishable by death, or worse yet. It's the only possession I have that means anything at all to me right now, and I'll sit here and read it until the moment of my death. How do you spend your last moments?
This is insanity, Mr. Wordsworth. Let me out of here. Let me out of here! Someone! Guards! Guards! Let me out of here!
You're cheating the audience,
Someone!
Chancellor. You're not
Anyone!
Chancellor. There's no one out there to hear you, Chancellor. It's one of the rules. You isolate the person to be liquidated. There's simply no one there. Why don't you face the camera, Chancellor? It's important, you know?
I'm beginning to understand. Mr. Wordsworth, shoe on the other foot, and that's the idea, isn't it? It's one thing for someone like yourself to do a little cringing, but what a choice opportunity to show a member of the state doing likewise. But you're insane, Wordsworth, if you think they'll let me stay here.
Request clarification of the term they. Meaning the state, Chancellor? I think they will sit on their hands for the time being. To even attempt to rescue would be too embarrassing for them. To have to go take one of the high party officials out of the soup, so to speak. I don't think they will be coming, Chancellor.
I misjudged you, Wordsworth.
You underestimated me. You wanted the whole country to see the way a librarian died. Well, let the whole country see the way a high party official dies, too. Let them see the courage of the state, the resilience of the state, the strength of the state. Let them see the way a valiant man of steel faces his death. You've got a nirvana coming up, too, Chancellor. So why don't I sit back down and we'll have a nice little chat. Just you and me and the great equalizer. Death, Chancellor, that's the equalizer. A strong, charismatic symbol of the giant authority and the insignificant librarian. And suddenly, in the eyes of God, there's precious little to distinguish us.
We shall see. Mr. Wordsworth, we shall see.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He leadeth me beside green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me along the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. Thou hast prepared a table before me in the sight of my foes. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. Less than a minute left, Chancellor.
Please, Mr. Wordsworth, please let me out. Please. In the name of God, let me out.
Yes, Chancellor. In the name of God, I'll let you out.
No further, stand where you are. You have been removed from office. The field investigators have declared you obsolete.
Obsolete?
You have been disgraced to the state. You have proven yourself a coward. You have, therefore, no function. You are obsolete.
I'm obsolete! I am not obsolete!
Obsolete!
How can you call me obsolete? How can you? I serve the state. I believe in the state. I give the state strength. You're making a terrible mistake. A tragic mistake. I'm not obsolete. I have a purpose. I have a function. Please. I'm not obsolete. I'm not.
The Chancellor is only partly correct. He is obsolete, but so too is the state. So is the entity that he worships. Any state becomes obsolete when it stockpiles the wrong weapons, when it captures countries but not minds, when it enslaves people but convinces no one, when it puts on armor and calls it faith, when in the eyes of God it is negative faith. It has no faith at all. Any state, any entity, any ideology that fails to recognize the worth of man, his dignity, or his rights, that state is obsolete. A case to be filed under the letter M for mankind in the Twilight Zone.